Hey guys, so I know when you read the title, you're like, remembering the narcissist? So why would we want to remember the narcissist? And there are a million infinite reasons why we need to remember the narcissist. Because at the end of the day, the narcissist is a disruption of the highest order, a disruption to family, a disruption to bonds, a disruption to everything we know as right and good. And imagine if the world were dominated by narcissists. What kind of society would we have? What kind of communities would we have? Ultimately, what kind of babies would we make? I mean, what would happen? Would everyone and forced to have sex? Would it go back to the days of human cattling and slavery? I mean, because if you have a dominant section of the society operating without conscience and operating without empathy, I would see that as being a huge problem. You know, there are two familiar causations, or two things that are familiar to what might be the cause of narcissism. And I want to get into that because we have to find a way to contain it, to buckle it down. And you're probably wondering, well, what the hell could I do? There's something that every one of us can do to reduce narcissism in our lives first, but in our society and after us. There's a legacy that we together have been chosen to participate in. When I looked up on Google what causes someone to be narcissistic, it read, the causes of narcissistic personality disorder are unknown. Experts tend to apply a biopsychosocial model of causation, whereby NPD, a pathological amplification of the traits of the narcissistic personality, occurs consequent to a combination of environmental and social, genetic, and neurobiological factors. So basically, our scientific and psychological community is saying, I don't fucking know. It's probably like anything else, the environment, or maybe they're born with a certain gene that makes them more susceptible to becoming narcissistically disordered in a certain kind of environment or surrounded by a certain social climate. But we're sure it has to be some type of genetic predisposition, but we're not absolutely sure, because at the same time we get highly sensitive people and empathetic people who grow up in abusive families, who are raped and tortured and beat and kidnapped for years and held hostage, and they somehow come out of it with empathy. So yeah, who knows, right? Because the psychological association by no means will entertain the idea that this may be a spiritual problem. Perhaps that's why we have no cure for narcissistic personality disorder. Maybe that's why the relative of mine who's an affective schizophrenic, who says that demons have been telling her to do, these things sometimes when she would do these things, and believe me, I believe her, because some of the things that she did is just not the person that I know. So are these demons improper electrical signals going to the brain causing a dysfunction, a disruption? Is there an electrical circuit broken that might be causing the narcissist to think and act in complete opposition to normal human beings? Is there an electric circuit? But what breaks that electric circuit? If it's an electrical impulse, just like the schizophrenic or some of these other cluster B personality disorders, what these psychopaths and sociopaths, these people who can kidnap, rape, cut up, and keep women and men and children in their basements for years. How does a person get like that? Why can't we Imagine that this may be something we have a little bit of control of, which I'm going to discuss, or maybe it's something spiritual. Maybe it's something as simple as demonic. Well, how could that be? Well, us normal folks get breath in our lungs every day when we go unconscious. No matter how much science tries to explain the human existence and consciousness, there is no explanation. Somehow, some way, we just keep breathing. And millions and millions and millions of neurons and atoms just keep operating. They just keep sending signals to one another to do certain things, like my lips are moving right now. The saliva in my mouth is just moving around, allowing the sound to vibrate out of my mouth and into this microphone through invisible waves to you on YouTube. So there is some force that we are not fully acknowledging, but we know that it exists. We call it God. So if there could be a God, a dominant spirit, an omnipresent spirit, that when I go to sleep tonight, it will keep on breathing for me because I am unconscious and unaware. So how the hell do I keep breathing properly? Why don't I, smother myself to death? Why don't I just stop breathing? In order for me to stop breathing, I'd have to have a condition that causes this interruption. But a normal, healthy person will continue breathing through this unknown force that triggers this electricity into the body. So if this is true for me, how is it that we cannot even think for a moment that the narcissist may be being triggered by a different consciousness or lack of consciousness? What entity would have a lack of consciousness? I'll leave that for you to ruminate through. I won't even go there. But you get what I'm saying. But let's talk about what we can do. We can pray away foreign or destructive spirits. We can pray this away in a unified way. And what comes with prayer to create manifestation? Action. In what ways can we apply actions to minimize causation 1 of narcissism? Causation 1 would be abuse. Abusing a child, talking to a child in a demeaning kind of way, being an alcoholic, molesting a child, doing anything that is harmful to a child's psyche, spirit, feelings, and emotions at a time when the child is completely reliant on love and nurturing and intimacy and bonding and touch and comfort from an adult. At the most sacred time of rearing a child, between newborn to 6 years old, when the child is in beta mode, when the child is basically unconscious and being programmed by everything that we do, we need to become aware and conscious of what we are doing with this child until this child has freedom of choice. The child is not born knowing. The child is born in learning. And at some point, that child would need to find a sense of autonomy and separate from the guardians, but healthily. We can do this. Causation number 2. A lot of people don't know that some people become narcissistic because of overly protective, overly zealous parents who treat their children as an extension of themselves. Narcissism. Another form of narcissism is over-praising, over-idealizing, unrealistically putting a child up on a pedestal, making the child appear perfect, encouraging the child to be perfect, encouraging the child to be better than others instead of better than it was yesterday, creating a competitive energy inside of the child, a competitive energy against others. You know, I see this in my community all the time, because at the root of narcissism is a fragile, insecure being that does not belong, or that doesn't feel that it belongs. Although all or most malignant overt narcissists are grandiose and operate in a grandiose way, and they have this deep and excessive need for attention and admiration, right? But they suffer troubled relationships and a lack of empathy and a lack of conscience towards others. But behind all of that extreme confidence is a fragile, willowed out, soft, beat up, not feeling good enough spirit that is super vulnerable at the slightest criticism. So this person who's pretending to be grandioso is actually feeling not good enough inside. And so the parent who inflicts or injects the grandiose mentality and spirit into a child, causation number 2, we're still on causation number 2, actually is creating a fragile person inside who is going to eventually have to impose its spirit or its true self with a false ego to keep up with this shit. I know you know the type. So these are 2 causations that we could work on. Actually 3, because I gave you the spiritual tool. We have to pray for these people. Hold up. Once we heal and forgive ourselves and forgive the narcissist, but this empathy that I am suggesting is not the kind of empathy that I mean that you take a narcissist back, that you deal with the narcissist in a logical way like you would deal with another human being. That's not what I mean. This is not an excuse to go call your ex-narcissist. This is not an excuse to take your narcissist back when they come crying at the door. Because a narcissist is a narcissist. And right now, the one agency that we rely on, and I mean several agencies that we rely on, that our tax money probably funds to a degree, and our government funds to a degree. The American Psychological Association is basically telling us they have no friggin' answers. And while I am not a professional, and I am not a doctor, and I am not a social worker, I am a well-advised, well-studied, and I continue to study and I continue to learn person of this society, of this community, who has suffered over 40 years of narcissistic abuse and still suffer. Even outside of it, I remain a target. I have a child that has been estranged from me through narcissistic abuse when I was unaware. Had I been aware, I would have never left my child with these narcissistic people to give them room to infiltrate. And so these kind of things inspire me to tell you guys that yes, we can help each and every one of us. Rest in peace to narcissism. Remembering how the narcissist became the narcissist is one of the most important lessons that we can take from the NPD community, that we can take from watching these kind of videos, that we can take after the healing. Remembering our power to create a narcissist or not. Remembering that what we do and how we treat other people actually can reflect in a whole personality disorder later on. And so that is my message tonight. I really hope this resonated with you. I hope you feel empowered at some point in your life to act out in ways that could minimize the creation of narcissistic personality disorder and limit our involvement in causations 1 and 2. If this video, really resonated with you and you felt it, prove it by pressing like. Love and light.